All right, let's dive into another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a concept that's central to, I think, understanding success, especially, in the world of finance. We're going to be talking about the roles of luck and risk.
Oh, yeah.
Morgan Housel, in his book, The Psychology of Money, he has this great phrase. He says, luck and risk are siblings. And that's really what we're going to be unpacking today.
Right.
Just how much of what we see as success can we chalk it up to just pure skill?
Right.
Versus those kind of often overlooked factors of luck and risk.
Yeah. It's super fascinating because in the narratives that we build around success, especially financial success, I think we really tend to zoom in on individual effort and talent.
Right.
But the reality is that luck and risk can be the defining factors, even if they don't really get equal billing in the stories.
Yeah, and it's almost like we're so drawn to that idea of the self-made individual.
Right.
Pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. But today, we're going beyond that appealing narrative, I think.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at how those self-made stories are often shaped by forces beyond anyone's control.
Absolutely. And I think there's probably no better illustration of this than the story of Bill Gates.
Okay.
And the unlikely series of events that led him to becoming, co-founder of Microsoft.
Okay, so we're talking Bill Gates, one of the, wealthiest people on the planet.
Right.
I think most people would probably point to, his brilliance, his entrepreneurial drive.
Right.
As the key ingredients of his success.
Sure.
You're saying there's more to the story.
Much more, yeah. So it all goes back to 1968 when a teenage Bill Gates was attending Lakeside School, a private school in Seattle. And what makes this seemingly ordinary fact extraordinary is that Lakeside happened to be one of the only schools in the world at that time to have a computer.
Wow.
And remember, this was an era when computers were these massive room-filling machines. They weren't exactly standard high school equipment.
Yeah, that's quite a unique advantage to have, especially back then.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this wasn't just simply a case of Lakeside being a super well-funded school.
Not exactly. No, it was a series of fortunate events that led to this. The Lakeside Mothers Club had a rummage sale.
Okay.
They raised a modest sum of money, and a visionary teacher named Bill Dougal saw an opportunity. He convinced the school to lease a teletype Model 30 computer with those funds. And this wasn't just any computer. This was connected to a General Electric mainframe terminal.
Wow.
Allowing for this, at the time, revolutionary technology, computer time sharing.
So you have this almost whimsical beginning, right?
Yeah.
A rummage sale, a forward-thinking teacher.
Right.
And it sets the stage for something monumental. I mean, it makes you wonder, if things had gone even slightly differently, would we even know the name Bill Gates today?
The odds definitely were not in his favor. Even Bill Gates acknowledges this, saying, quote, "Someone was pretty forward-looking," referring to how rare this opportunity was. Most universities didn't even have access to this level of computing power, let alone high schools.
Right.
And what's even more remarkable is that access to the computer wasn't part of the standard curriculum. It was an independent study program giving Gates and his classmate, Paul Allen, essentially free rein to explore this groundbreaking technology.
It's almost hard to fathom, right? A teenager given unlimited access to what was essentially at the time the cutting edge of technology. I mean, it sounds like a recipe for founding Microsoft.
Yeah, it's no coincidence that Gates and Allen spent countless hours on that computer, teaching themselves programming, becoming experts in a field that was, still in its infancy. And during one late-night session, Allen recalls Gates looking at a Fortune magazine and asking, quote, "What do you think it's like to run a Fortune 500 company?" And Allen admitted he had no idea. And then in this moment of almost eerie foreshadowing, Gates declares, maybe we'll have our own computer company someday.
So easy to see that as an early sign of ambition, right, of a future titan of industry. But I can't help but wonder, would that ambition have been ignited, let alone fulfilled, without that incredible stroke of luck?
It's a question worth pondering. Out of the roughly 303 million high school-aged individuals in the world at that time, only about 300 attended Lakeside, so a 1 in a million scenario.
Wow.
So Gates, brilliant as he is, was incredibly fortunate to be one of those 300. Even he readily admits the profound impact of this chance event, stating, quote, "If there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft."
So we have this clear case of how luck can really set someone on a trajectory towards, phenomenal success. And it makes you think about how many brilliant minds are out there who simply never got that lucky break.
Right.
That 1 in a million chance. that can change everything.
Yeah, and to highlight just how powerful and how arbitrary this interplay of luck and risk can be, Morgan Housel contrasts Bill Gates' story with that of his equally brilliant best friend, Kent Evans.
Okay, this is where things start to get even more interesting, right? You have these two incredibly bright young minds, both immersed in the world of computers, and yet their paths diverge so dramatically.
Precisely, yeah. We all know how Bill Gates and Paul Allen went on to become, household names, with Microsoft becoming this global tech giant. But their friend, Kent Evans, he was considered just as gifted with computers as Gates and Allen, and he even shared Gates's entrepreneurial drive.
So they were like this dynamic trio.
Yeah.
Like a dream team in the making.
Right.
Sounds like they were poised to take on the world together. What happened?
Yeah.
Why haven't we heard of Kent Evans in the same way we know Bill Gates and Paul Allen?
So tragically, Evans died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated high school.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly sad. It's hard to even imagine the loss his friends and family must have felt.
Right.
But it also highlights something profound, doesn't it? This idea that luck, in its purest form, can have such drastically different outcomes.
Absolutely, yeah. The odds of being killed in a mountaineering accident in high school are, coincidentally also, roughly 1 in a million.
Wow.
So same magnitude of chance as Gates getting access to that rare computer. Completely opposite outcomes.
Right.
It's a stark reminder that luck and risk are two sides of the same coin. They both operate in this realm of chance where, the world is simply too complex to allow 100% of our actions to dictate 100% of our outcomes.
It's like they both flipped a coin, and for one, it landed on heads,
Right.
leading to extraordinary success, while for the other, it landed on tails,
Right.
resulting in a tragic end. And these seemingly random flips had profound consequences. So where do we go from here? How do we grapple with this reality, especially when it comes to understanding financial success?
That's a great question, and one that I think we'll continue to explore. But I think perhaps the first step is acknowledging just how difficult it is to judge success accurately. When these factors of luck and risk are so deeply woven into the fabric of outcomes.
Right, because it's easy to look at someone else's success and chalk it up to luck. And then on the flip side of that, we can be so quick to judge failure as purely on, poor decision-making or, these things without factoring in risk.
Exactly.
Right. It seems like we just tend to oversimplify these narratives to fit our understanding of the world.
You've hit on a crucial point, and as we'll see, this tendency to oversimplify isn't limited to casual observers. Even economists grapple with this invisible hand of luck and risk.
Okay, that sounds like a great place to pick up our conversation. I'm ready to delve deeper.
Right.
So you're saying that even those who, study financial markets like for a living, they have a hard time accounting for the roles of luck and risk.
It seems so, yeah. Morgan Housel recounts a conversation he had with Nobel Prize-winning economist Robert Shiller, and Housel asked him, quote, "What do you want to know about investing that we can't know?"
Now, I'm curious, what was Shiller's response? That sounds like the kind of question that could spark a whole other deep dive.
Schiller's answer was surprisingly straightforward. He said, quote, "The exact role of luck in successful outcomes."
That's a pretty profound admission, especially coming from someone who's dedicated his career to, understanding the intricacies of financial markets. It really underscores just how elusive and hard to quantify luck can be.
And precisely because it's so difficult to measure, we have a tendency to downplay it. Think about it. When we see someone else succeed, it's easy to chalk it up to luck. Maybe even feel a tinge of envy, like as if that somehow diminishes their hard work.
Right.
But when it comes to our own successes, acknowledging the role of luck can feel, a bit demoralizing, like we didn't really earn it.
It's almost like we have this, complicated relationship with luck.
Yeah.
We know it exists. We're hesitant to give it too much credit,
Right.
especially when it comes to our own achievements.
Exactly. And to illustrate this point, Housel uses an interesting example. He points out that incomes among brothers are actually more closely correlated than their height or weight, meaning that if you have a rich brother who's also tall, statistically, he's more likely to be rich than he is to be tall.
That's fascinating. So you're saying that our financial outcomes might be more influenced by, family background,
Right.
our upbringing, the early opportunities we're exposed to, than, even our physical attributes, which are largely determined by genetics.
Precisely. It highlights the impact of things like, the quality of education we receive, the networks we're exposed to, the doors that are open for us, all of which are heavily linked to our parents' socioeconomic status. It kind of throws a wrench into the whole self-made narrative, doesn't it?
It certainly makes you reconsider those stories. It's a good reminder that success, especially financial success, isn't always a level playing field.
And it's not just success that we tend to oversimplify. We do the same thing with failure.
Right, because we often assume that, failed businesses simply didn't try hard enough, or bad investments, it was just poor decision making.
Right.
We don't always factor in risk.
Exactly. Every endeavor, no matter how well planned or well executed, carries a certain level of risk. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, you end up on the wrong side of that risk equation, even if you made what seemed like a sound decision at the time.
So it sounds like what you're saying is we need to be more nuanced in how we view both success and failure.
Yeah.
Instead of attributing outcomes solely to individual actions, we should really acknowledge the powerful influence of luck and risk.
Absolutely.
But how do we actually do that? How do we learn from both successes and failures without falling into that trap of oversimplification?
That's the million-dollar question. Fortunately, Housel offers some insightful guidance on navigating this complex terrain. He starts by cautioning us to be careful about who we praise and admire, and equally careful about who we look down upon.
Right.
Because more often than not, we don't have the full picture. We don't see the often invisible roles that luck and risk played in shaping those outcomes.
Yeah, it's like that saying, don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle.
Right. We're often only seeing a snapshot. We're not, we don't know the full context of their struggles, their setbacks, their lucky breaks.
Precisely. And that leads to Housel's second piece of advice, which is to focus on broad patterns rather than idolizing specific individuals.
Okay.
When we fixate on those extreme examples of success, like billionaires or CEOs, or even massive failures that make headlines, we're drawn to the outliers, the dramatic stories. But the more extreme the outcome, the more likely it was influenced by extreme levels of luck or risk, making those lessons less applicable to our own lives.
So instead of trying to follow in the footsteps of, Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, like step by step, we should be looking for those kind of more common, relatable patterns of financial well-being.
Exactly.
The principles that apply to kind of a wider range of circumstances and individuals. Exactly. Things like, living within your means, saving consistently, diversifying your investments. These are the fundamental principles that tend to hold true regardless of your individual circumstances or luck. It's about focusing on the things you can control rather than trying to replicate someone else's unique path, which was likely heavily influenced by factors outside their control.
Yeah, it's a refreshing perspective, especially in a world that often glorifies those outlier stories.
Right.
And it's a reminder that success, especially financial success, isn't always about grand gestures or risky bets. It's often about consistency, discipline, and a bit of luck along the way.
Well said. And there's one more crucial point that Housel makes about this whole dynamic between luck and risk that I think is worth highlighting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
He emphasizes the importance of cultivating humility and forgiveness, both towards ourselves and others. He reminds us that, quote, nothing is as good or as bad as it seems, especially when we factor in the often invisible hand of luck and risk.
Yeah, that's a powerful reminder, especially when we're dealing with something, as emotionally charged as money.
Right.
We can be so hard on ourselves.
Right.
We experience, financial setbacks without really considering the role of those external factors we couldn't have predicted or controlled.
And conversely, we can be too quick to judge others who haven't achieved the same level of financial success without knowing the challenges and risks that they might have faced.
It's a call for empathy, really.
Yeah.
To acknowledge that, everyone's playing this game of life with a different set of cards.
Right.
Dealt by a random hand.
Right.
Some were dealt a better hand than others, but it doesn't mean the game is over.
Beautifully put. And to drive home this point about humility, Housel shares a particularly poignant excerpt from a letter he wrote to his son.
Oh, I would love to hear it. It sounds like the kind of wisdom we could all benefit from.
So he writes, quote, some people are born into families that encourage education, others are against it. Some are born into flourishing economies encouraging of entrepreneurship. Others are born into war and destitution. I want you to be successful, and I want you to earn it. But realize that not all success is due to hard work, and not all poverty is due to laziness. Keep this in mind when judging people, including yourself.
That's such a profound message. It's a reminder that success isn't always a direct reflection of merit or hard work. And failure isn't always a sign of laziness or poor judgment. There's so many other factors at play, and it's crucial to keep that in mind when we're evaluating both ourselves and others.
And it's particularly relevant when we're talking about money, because financial success is often seen as this ultimate measure of worth, of hard work and smart decisions.
But as we've been exploring today, it's so much more nuanced than that. Luck and risk, these often invisible forces, they play a far greater role than we typically acknowledge.
Yeah.
Which leads me to ask, how do we actually see these forces at work? Can you give us some concrete examples of how this blurred line between skill, luck, and risk manifests in the real world?
Absolutely. Let's look at some compelling case studies that bring this dynamic to life.
Okay, I'm ready to explore those real-world examples.
All right, so let's start with Cornelius Vanderbilt,
Okay.
the railroad tycoon. He was notorious for his ruthless business tactics, often skirting or outright breaking the law to build his empire. There's even an anecdote about one of his advisors pointing out that, quote, every single deal Vanderbilt has made was technically illegal.
That's quite a bold approach to business,
Yeah.
to say the least. And what was Vanderbilt's response to this?
Not one of remorse or concern, that's for sure.
Right.
His response was essentially, what are they going to do about it?
So is this a case for celebrating audacity, for pushing boundaries, even if it means kind of operating outside the lines?
Yeah.
Should aspiring entrepreneurs look to Vanderbilt as a model for success?
That's where the complexity of this whole luck-risk dynamic comes in.
Right.
Vanderbilt achieved extraordinary success, so it's tempting to view his disregard for the law as a key ingredient in that success.
Right.
But is that the right lesson to take away?
Right. I think it's worth considering, the context of his time,
Right.
the industries he dominated,
Right.
his personality. These factors likely played a role in his ability to operate the way he did and still achieve, such massive success.
Yeah, and what worked for Vanderbilt in the 19th century might not exactly be a recipe for success in today's business world.
And speaking of, risky business practices, you mentioned Enron earlier.
Yeah.
A company that also engaged in some, let's say, questionable dealings with a very different outcome.
Right. Enron's downfall was spectacular and highly publicized. They engaged in accounting fraud and market manipulation on a grand scale, ultimately leading to the company's collapse and the imprisonment of several key executives.
So we have these two examples. We have Vanderbilt, who amassed a fortune, while operating outside the law,
Yeah.
and Enron, which imploded spectacularly while engaging in similar practices. It makes you wonder, where's the line?
Yeah.
Was Vanderbilt just incredibly lucky to avoid getting caught, while Enron just faced the full force of the law? Or was there something fundamentally different in their approach, their risk tolerance, or the context in which they operated that led to such divergent outcomes?
It's a difficult question to answer definitively. It's often impossible to disentangle the roles of skill, luck, and risk when we're analyzing these kinds of stories.
Right, and it's not just limited to those who operate outside the law.
Right.
I mean, even someone like Benjamin Graham, who's considered, the father of value investing,
Yeah.
faced this same dynamic.
Indeed, a significant portion of Graham's success came from investing heavily in Geico stock, a move that actually went against his own principles of diversification.
Benjamin Graham, Warren Buffett's mentor, the guy who, literally wrote the book on value investing.
Right.
You're saying even he was influenced by luck and risk.
Yeah, it turned out to be a brilliant move, but was it a stroke of genius? A calculated risk that paid off, or simply a lucky gamble?
Right.
Even Graham himself admitted it was difficult to say for sure.
It seems like the more we examine these success stories, the more we see kind of how intertwined skill, luck, and risk really are.
No.
It's a bit like trying to untangle a knot
Right.
that keeps getting tighter. Is this luck-risk dynamic just something that we kind of have to accept, like as an inherent part of the game, or are there ways to navigate it more effectively?
I think Housel's advice to focus on broad patterns rather than specific individuals is key here. Instead of trying to emulate those outlier success stories, those one in a million shots, we should look for those principles that lead to financial well-being across across a wider range of circumstances and individuals.
Right, things like, having a long-term perspective, managing risk, diversifying investments, staying disciplined no matter what the market is doing. These sound like the fundamentals of sound financial planning.
Exactly.
Not exactly, the get-rich-quick schemes that often grab headlines.
Exactly. Those are the principles that can help you weather those inevitable market storms and come out ahead in the long run, regardless of how the luck-risk coin flips.
So it's not about trying to become the next Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. It's really about building a solid financial foundation based on, sound principles, understanding that luck and risk will always be factors, but they don't have to dictate the outcome of the game.
Well said. And remember, Housel's important reminder, nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. Don't let a lucky street lead to overconfidence. And don't let a few setbacks make you lose faith in yourself or your overall strategy.
It's all about perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Acknowledging the roles of luck and risk, it helps us stay grounded when things are going well.
Yeah.
And it gives us that resilience to bounce back from those inevitable setbacks.
Precisely. And that brings us back to, the importance of humility and forgiveness.
Right.
Understanding that luck and risk are always at play, both in our own lives and the lives of others, allows us to approach both success and failure with a more balanced and compassionate perspective.
It's a powerful reminder that we're all kind of navigating this complex world, making the best decisions we can with the information and opportunities we have at any given moment. And sometimes those decisions lead to, great success, and sometimes they don't. But acknowledging the influence of those forces beyond our control can help us approach those outcomes with a greater sense of understanding and even grace.
I think that's a great point to leave our listeners with. As you continue to explore the world of finance and navigate your own financial journeys, keep this complex interplay of luck, risk, and skill in mind. It might just change the way you view success, failure, and everything in between.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive today. It's been an enlightening conversation.
My pleasure. Always enjoy these conversations.
And to our listeners, until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.